afternoon. My name is Carol Naughton and I'm with Purpose Built Communities, and thank you all for being here and thank you for inviting us today. It has been my great honor to work on the revitalization of the Eastlake neighborhood with the community, with other stakeholders since 1995 in a variety of capacities. I continue to serve Eastlake today and have this wonderful opportunity to share this framework with other local leaders for them to determine whether this is a model that makes sense for their community. If you'll allow me, I'm going to try to move forward. And this, I'm not always a master of my technology, but I did it this time. This presentation will contain quite a lot of data, and so we've made copies available. We've got an electronic copy here, and if anybody else would like a copy, we'd be happy to provide it later. We're going to talk a little bit about Purpose Built, about our Eastlake experience, and how we're helping communities around the country take those lessons learned in the framework and helping them design something that works in their neighborhood. Our mission is about transformation, creating the kinds of communities that allow every single person to achieve their full potential. My colleague and mentor at the Atlanta Housing Authority talked about building communities for children of God with unlimited human potential. And that's what I think we're doing here today by creating this infrastructure and the opportunity. We look for an opportunity to create the infrastructure that allows families to break the cycle of poverty and do it in a way that creates healthy and sustainable neighborhoods long term. And it's based on our experience at Eastlake. But I will share with you that we look for other good examples around the country. When we see something that works, we take it and we incorporate it into what we do as well. Here's Eastlake back in 1995. By every single measure, this was a community in extraordinary distress. About 1,400 people lived in Eastlake, 650 apartments on 54 acres. Almost 40% of the units were uninhabitable. The crime rate was 18 times the national average, and almost every single family was likely to be the victim of a felony in any given year. Only 13% of adults in the community worked. Most families relied on welfare as their primary source of income, and the average income for families was less than $5,000 a year. But this is why we knew that unless something dramatic happened in the community, families and children were only going to fall further and further behind. Only 5% of children in the Eastlake neighborhood could pass the state math test. Less than 30% of kids graduated from high school, and a good portion of those children were truly not prepared to be participants in the economy. When we started together, Eastlake Foundation, the residents of Eastlake Meadows, and the Atlanta Housing Authority came together to plan what this new community would look like. We could spend all day talking about resident engagement and resident participation, and it is such an important topic that I'd love to come back and do that specifically. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to spend too much time on that right now. We had hundreds and hundreds of meetings. We had lots of banging heads trying to figure out what the right path was for Eastlake. And we built relationships and ultimately reached consensus on what would happen in the community. The woman you see on the left is Eva Davis. She was president of the Eastlake Meadows Tenants Association from 1969 all the way until the mid-1990s. Ms. Davis was truly a community leader. I wish she could be here with me today. She is ill in Atlanta. I told her, talked to her over the weekend and told her that we would be here today. She asked me to bring her greetings and wish you the best of luck and encourage you to take this opportunity seriously. There's no one who is a better advocate and a more passionate person about this kind of community revitalization than Eva Davis. Here's Eastlake today, 15 years from where we started. More people live in the Eastlake neighborhood than did before. We replaced the old public housing with 542 mixed income apartments. In mixed income, in our case, that means 50% of the units are rented to families who qualify for public housing assistance. That means they pay the same amount to live in the villages of Eastlake that they used to pay to live in the old Eastlake Meadows. And the other 50% are rented to families who qualify for market rates, who do not qualify for a subsidy but can pay whatever the market will bear. Crime is down dramatically, 73% reduction in crime overall, 90% reduction in violent crime. And one of the things we're most excited, our neighborhood has now become one of the lowest crime neighborhoods in the city of Atlanta. Families have gone to work. Of the residents who receive public housing assistance in Atlanta, 70% work. Those who do not work are elderly or disabled or between jobs. Income for the families receiving public housing assistance has gone up almost 4 times that what it was in 1995. Now, there's still extremely low income, but families are working and have made that transition from a reliance on welfare to a reliance on work for the primary source of income. But this is why we know we're really onto something. We've closed the achievement gap for kids in the community. Now, if you remember, 5% of the kids could pass the state math test back in 1996. Now, 98% of 5th graders pass the state math test. And we've got 860 children served in a high-performing school that serves as the anchor of our community. Well, what happened? We had 1,000 people a year coming to visit us in Eastlake from about 1999 all the way through 2006. And they'd come and they'd get all excited, they'd see what was going on, they'd want to do it, and then very seldom nothing happened. And when we'd say, well, you said you were going to do something, why didn't you? And people say, well, we don't know where to start. Or, I know about how to do housing, or I know about how to do education, or I know about community development, but I don't know about all of it. And so what we realized that there was a role here for a newly created not-for-profit to provide this technical assistance around this framework to help local leaders figure out local solutions to some of these kinds of challenges. And so we created purpose-built communities to fill that need. We're a not-for-profit. We don't charge anything for our services. We're not developers, but we work with local leaders to help craft local solutions using this framework. And our framework is pretty simple and pretty clear-cut. There's 3 pillars and a secret sauce. The 3 pillars: mixed income housing, cradle to college education pipeline, and then community services and facilities, or what I refer to as a community wellness initiative. And the secret sauce is creation of a new lead organization, which will be a not-for-profit that pulls together all the potential partners and helps everybody create a common vision and work together to maximize opportunities. We know, as we take these things one at a time, we know concentrated poverty creates very difficult circumstances for families to succeed. We know a mixed income community attracts a lot of other good opportunities that benefit everybody. So we look for an opportunity to replace concentrated low-income housing with mixed income housing that frankly does a better job of serving everyone in the community. We believe that cradle through college education pipeline is absolutely essential. Layering together really high quality early learning with new elementary schools and high schools that are designed to move children seamlessly through a pipeline. In most cases, children fall out in the places that we can predict. Data shows us where kids fall out in a public education pipeline. We know where those places are, and we know that we can also build a pipeline that serves kids from the single neighborhood we're going to focus on and help them get all the way through college. I want to tell you about Drew students. When we first opened our charter school 11 years ago, our school was the lowest performing school in Atlanta. And that was a real fair read of where we started. We were serving the children we wanted to serve, children who had not been well served by Atlanta Public Schools. Over the next 10 years, our school moved to the 7th highest school, elementary school in Atlanta. And you can see the kinds of results that children have been able to accomplish. At this stage of the game, Drew students outperform the state and the city averages in every subject, in every grade, from pre-K all the way through 8th grade. Our children are doing great. We've in fact closed the achievement gap between low-income and higher-income children. If I was going to show you just one slide about Eastlake, this would be it. This is the slide. You see Drew Charter School in green on the left. And you see these other schools, Brandon, Jackson, Morningside, Sarah Smith, Mary Lynn. Those are the fancy pants schools on the north side of town that have very low poverty rates. You see the rates of free and reduced lunch across the bottom. Those are the schools now that Drew Charter School benchmarks against and competes against. With our poverty rate of approximately 80%, we're outperforming schools that have poverty rates of less than 15%. This method works. Kids can achieve at really high levels, and if they're achieving at really high levels, they are positioned to go on to greatness. Also wanted to point out, we can pick any grade, any subject, but I like these next 2 slides because they show that our kids are not just barely meeting standards, they're exceeding state standards. And frankly, if you want to be competitive in this global world, you've got to be better than average. and our kids are better than average. And we know every child with the right support can be better than average. Drew Charter School CRCT, the Georgia Criterion Reference Competency Test, just outrageously great results over time. You know, I hate to have to admit this, but you've all read about the Georgia cheating scandal in Atlanta public schools. Our school was not implicated in any way, shape, or form, got a clean bill of health. In fact, was one of the very few high poverty, high minority schools not to be involved in the cheating scandal. It never would have occurred to us not to trust our kids and our teachers to know what levels that they could achieve. The third element is that community health and wellness, community supportive services. Every community needs YMCAs, rec centers, grocery stores, banks, those kinds of things that are the quality of life infrastructure. And this framework works again with local leaders to identify what those gaps are in the community and try to find ways to bring those services to the neighborhood. And here's our secret sauce. That lead organization, again, a not-for-profit that has a long-term commitment to the neighborhood. It typically doesn't deliver any of the services itself, but creates the space that allows other partners who are really good at what they do to come to the neighborhood and serve the community, so we can maximize what everyone does well. And when everybody's doing it together, you can get beyond the whole ends up greater than the sum of its parts. This organization needs to be relentlessly focused on outcomes and be transparent in how it does business and hold one another accountable, hold the partners accountable, be accountable to the community and to the funders. And of course, this organization needs to have the capacity to raise funds from time to time, again, to fill the gaps and voids that might be needed. In Eastlake, we focused on a 200-acre campus. And all of our investment was in this 200-acre campus. But the area of impact was really much further. This whole area of impact, there had not been a building permit issued in this area in 27 years before we started on the revitalization of the Eastlake neighborhood. Enormous disinvestment in the community. And now housing prices have gone up about 4 times what they were before we started, and they have held their values better than other neighborhoods in Atlanta over the last couple of years. This strategy has also attracted a lot of additional private investment that benefits everybody in the neighborhood. Every community wants a grocery store. Every community needs banking services. And this mixed income strategy that creates this platform attracts additional investment to the community. We know it works here, we know it worked in Atlanta, and it's working in other places now. What we do, purpose-built communities, we're not-for-profit consultants. We don't charge for what we do, but frankly, there's more demand for this kind of assistance than there are us. And so we look for places where we've been invited in, where there's a meeting of the minds, where it seems like the conditions for potential success are present, and where it makes sense for us to devote some time, and where the local leadership says this is what we want to do. Right now we're working as far north and west as Omaha. We're working in Texas, in Galveston, and just starting a project now in Houston. New Orleans is underway, Birmingham, Rome, Charlotte, Indianapolis. We're exploring work in cities as far east and north as Philadelphia and Newark. We're also working now in Spartanburg, so lots of different cities are looking at this framework and like what they see. Again, we look for the opportunities where those levers of success are present, and we work with local leaders to help do this. In New Orleans, I'd encourage you to take a look at the Bayou District Foundation website when you have a chance. This was a public housing community that was devastated by Hurricane Katrina. There was 8 feet of water in this community for 21 days after the storm. And the Bayou District Foundation was created and used Eastlake as its framework. They have got now 500 new mixed income housing units up and operational. Hugely successful. They're bringing in a new Educare Early Learning Center that'll be under construction this month. They're bringing in a new charter school and a new public high school, a traditional public high school, as well as a new YMCA, a branch bank, a grocery store, and a health clinic for the neighborhood. Frankly, when the Bayou District project is done, Eastlake will look rinky-dink. Same kind of project going on in Indianapolis. In Indianapolis, though, instead of housing coming first, the charter schools came first. There are 2 high-performing charter schools in the community and an opportunity to build housing around those schools. And so that's underway now. led by another not-for-profit called the Avondale Community Foundation. And again, they're on track to do some really great things. I could talk for a long time, but I think it'd be a lot more fun if we had questions and answers. I will remind you again that what we have to offer is a proven framework. We have some really fabulous consultants who work with local leaders to help them craft the plans that make sense in their community. We connect you with other people around the country who are doing the same kind of work to create a community of practice so people can learn from one another and mentor one another. We can introduce you to people around the country who are really best in class at what they do. And you can be part of this network and be part of this brand. We're also developing tools to help accelerate the work so it goes faster. And the one commitment that I can promise that we will make to whoever we work with is that, number one, we're transparent. We'll share with you what's worked and what hasn't worked, and we'll share with you what we would do differently if we were starting over. So thank you very much. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We do have a
Sherilyn, I can
question.
do that.
Yes. For